just say a few words about the policies that have made it harder to be a police officer, and most importantly, harder for it to just be a citizen who wants basic public safety in this country. So Kamala Harris is on a tour where she's trying to redefine her record as a tough-on-crime prosecutor. And yet, if you look at Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor, it is the opposite of tough on crime. For example, Kamala Harris pursued a policy that would recategorize people who had committed sex crimes with minors and people who had raped unconscious victims as nonviolent crimes. And what does that mean? That means those people get out of prison earlier. That means their victims have to suffer the psychological abuse of seeing them walking around our streets sooner. And that means the police officer have a few more sickos that they have to take care of instead of being in prison where those sex offenders belong. If Kamala Harris was so tough on crime, why is she making it easier for sex offenders to get out of prison? I think the media should ask her that question. Of course, Kamala Harris refuses to answer questions, but this is important stuff. I grew up in a family where we didn't have a whole lot of money, and I was raised by a tough-as-nails grandmother who, despite the fact that we didn't always live in the easiest neighborhood, we had something that our country believed every child deserved. Whether they were rich or poor, our country believed that every child deserved public safety. And as Republicans, we don't think the government should do everything, but the things that it needs to do, it has to do well, and public safety is at the very top of the list. How can you have a country? How can you have an American dream? How can you have poor children who look to the future with optimism and hope if they can't walk down the streets of their neighborhood safely? And these police officers fight to make that a reality every single day. And Kamala Harris is making their job harder, and Donald Trump is going to make their lives easier. That's why we're going to re-elect him the 47th President of the United States.
Yeah.
So let me just offer one final observation here, because so many of these issues are connected. So many of these problems are obviously linked to one another. And talking at the round table with the police officers and the sheriffs really drove that point home. So I talked to one sheriff who lives about an hour away from downtown Milwaukee. And even though he lives an hour away from downtown Milwaukee, he has Mexican drug cartel members who have been doing business, selling drugs, and harming the citizens of his community. When you hear Republicans say every state is a border state, that is not just a slogan. That is a sad reflection of the reality that we have drug cartels operating about as far north in this country as we possibly could. What a disgrace. You hear people talk about arresting illegal immigrants and how the illegal immigrants completely run away, refuse to obey the commands of law enforcement. Why? Why do they completely refuse to obey the commands of law enforcement? Because they got into this country in the first place under the promise that law enforcement wouldn't stop them and wouldn't enforce the law. So the border policies that we have at the southern border, they make our communities less safe, even as far north as Wisconsin. It means Mexican drug cartels operating in our communities. It means people dying of fentanyl. I talked to another police officer who talked about we have fentanyl not just in heroin and opioids and even prescription pills, or I guess non-prescription pills that are sold on the street. We've got heroin and we've got fentanyl, we've got fentanyl in our marijuana bags that our teenagers are using. And look, I'm the parent of 3 young kids. My wife is here, and I'm thrilled to have her join. We've got a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. We don't have to worry about this yet. But I'm certain, because kids are kids, that one day one of my kids is going to take something or do something that I don't want them to take. But I don't want that mistake to ruin their life. I want them to learn from it. I want their parents to be able to punish them. I don't want our kids to make mistakes on American streets and have it take their lives away from them. That is in some ways what this fentanyl crisis has done. Normal American teenager mistakes have become death sentences because Kamala Harris refuses to do her job. And I think it's time for all of us to say to Kamala Harris, you want a promotion? You want a promotion after your record as vice president? We think you ought to be fired, and that's exactly what we're going to do come November. Thank you all for being here. To the police officers, To the police officers, we support you. We love you. We know it's not easy to be a police officer. We know we're losing a lot of good people from the force. Some due to retirement, but some, they're just sick of all the garbage. But I'd ask you, keep at it for as long as you can. Keep doing this important work because there are a lot of us out there who are grateful for it. And in about 6 months, your job's going to become a hell of a lot easier. God bless you guys, and thank you for having me here in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So.